Hello. In the current session, I want to demonstrate how to use the contrast manager, and for that purpose, I will first load a GLM file, and next I will then open the contrast manager from the analysis menu. As you can see, there's currently no contrasts, groups, or covariates configured. So this is what I'm going to do now. To clean up the space a little, I will minimize the main UI to its smaller representation, and then also show the beta plotter, which I will resize a little so that it fits neatly into the screen. Okay, so I'm going back to the contrast manager and clicking the little plus next to the currently grayed out drop-down box allows me to name a contrast. In this experiment, the conditions are visual stimuli with cues in the actual stimulus, and we had negative and neutral stimuli under look and a decrease affect condition. So the contrasts of main interest in this study were actually the look negative over neutral contrast. So I select the look negative stimulus, click on the 1, look neutral stimulus, click on the -1, which configures this contrast. And then the other contrast of interest is decrease negative over look negative, which I configure in the same way. If the contrast is of more complex nature, so you have several predictors for both positive and negative weights, you can afterwards click this little balance, which will automatically make sure that the sum of positive and sum of negative weights equal to the same absolute value. Once I have these configured, I will select them in the beta plotter, click the little color button, and then for the look negative over neutral, I will select a very red color, and you can always edit the colors both in with the color picker, or you can simply edit them by assigning the RGB color code, which will update then the bars. And the next thing I want to do is I will configure groups, and I simply enable this checkbox, and then I start to rename the groups. In this experiment we had 3 age groups, so the first group were participants up to the age of 14, the next group were participants between the age of 14 and 18, and the third group is all participants older than 18. Okay, once I have these groups configured, I of course need to find out who is in what group. I have a covariates file that I will load now. It's a little mat file which contains 2 variables. One is a cell array of strings which gives the names for each of the covariates, and the other is a numeric table, simply a double variable. Okay, this loads them up here, but of course I cannot immediately see which participant is in which group, so I will quickly go to MATLAB and then also load this variable in MATLAB by simply double-clicking the variable, which will make it available. And then under names, I can see that the fourth is the age, and under variates, I can then see that this is my age, and this is actually the subject ID. So to figure out which is which, I will now simply say variates, where variates 4 is smaller than 14, and that of the first column. And then I will get 57, 67, and those are the IDs of the subjects. And of course now I want to first see who is in the third group. So the adults, this is 59, 60, 62, and so I've switched back to the contrast manager, and then I have this selected, so it's 59, 60, 62, 73, 74, 75, 76, 79, 80, 82, and then there's a little gap. And so I just configure those subjects. And then I want to know who's in the next group, so older than 14, but not yet 18. And this is my second group. And then if I go back to the first group, I can already see that some subjects are remaining, and I can then simply see if the selection is correct. So it should be 56, 76, 100, 121, and so forth. So that looks good. If I click Compute Current Now, it will compute this contrast. Of course, minimize MATLAB again. It will compute this contrast with groups enabled. If I want to temporarily disable groups, I can simply uncheck this box and it will keep the selection. So I will now compute this contrast in the without groups defined. And it will actually compute both contrasts. The contrast manager has ordinary least squares regression and robust regression options. The contrast manager briefly disappears while contrasts are computed so that no more settings can be made. And now I can already see that the display has been updated, and this now represents the first contrast that was configured. And if I wish to run, let's say, a correlation of one contrast, I can switch to the contrast. Once again, I will for now disable the groups, select the covariate, and then simply say compute this contrast correlated with this covariate. Once again, the contrast manager briefly disappears, and then I have some additional maps. When the contrast manager computes a map, it automatically selects the first map that is then selected, so that automatically the display updates. Okay, as I can already see, the betas for the three groups are plotted here, and I think this for now concludes the workings of the contrast manager. Thanks for watching.